Same degree. All right, today we're going to learn Parshas Behar and Bechukosai, a double portion. Press play now. Oh, it already was? Oh, but this is where it begins. Okay. So, how are you managing that, Jen? You okay? You all right? Okay.
Starting to feel it now.
That means you're putting too much pressure on it.
Oh.
So we are page 783, 784. So let's give a little bit of a recap of the story till now, because the Torah is going in a bit of a chronological state. So Jews come out of Egypt as a nation. We get some basic mitzvahs like how to function as Jews before the Torah was even given. Right? So Moshe is quick to tell the Jews, Passover, big mitzvah, calendar, you got to keep a Jewish calendar. I'm going to tell you about Shabbat, because Shabbat's really a primary mitzvah. I'm going to tell you about mitzvah of tefillin, and then you'll get the rest at Mount Sinai with receiving the Torah. Moses goes up there, comes down with the top 10 commandments that God said are the fundamental principles of Judaism, and start with that, basically. Believe in God, don't worship idols, don't say God's name in vain, observe the Shabbat, honor and respect your parents, don't murder, don't commit adultery, don't steal, don't commit perjury, and don't be jealous of other people's stuff. All basic human menschlichkeit and basic godly beliefs. So the Jews were ready now to get more. So what does God start with? Starts with, oh, you guys just messed up by worshiping a golden calf. That's not very good. We're going to have to fix that. Now you have to make a home for me. Use the gold that you misused for the golden calf, and use the gold for something good. Remember the story of the Rebbe coming to visit camp? And he saw the sign over the canteen that said, money is the root of all evil, so leave your evil here with us. It was a great line, and kids would come by, the Rebbe said, take that down. Money may be the root of all evil, but it's the root of all good too. So you have to be honest. Everything can be zeh le'uma zeh. One thing can be opposing the other. Like even this water, it could be with a blessing, and I use it to energize myself so I can study Torah and do a mitzvah, or I can throw it at you, and then I use it as So everything could be used in whichever way you choose to, based on what drives you. So the same thing was with gold. Hashem said, you just use it for a terrible thing, but you can use it now for building me a home, a mishkan, and making it a worthwhile material and worthwhile endeavor. And so they built the mishkan, and that became the big focal point. And then all the laws of what's done in the mishkan were taught to the Jews. And they were very excited about that, because they needed, everyone needs a central focus to keep them busy. Right? To keep where am I going to channel all of my spiritual energy that I have? And I want to connect to something higher than me. So now they had it. Bring offerings, remain spiritually pure and clean. If you're not spiritually pure and clean, then cleanse yourself. This is how to do it. If you get saras, you cleanse yourself this way. If you come in contact with a dead body, cleanse yourself this way. And then we talked about generally how to be holy and connect to Hashem. And usually that refers to separating yourself from physical and mundane and worldly and other nations and their behavior. And so everyone's excited. All the Jews are feeling very pumped about this new religion, about how they're supposed to connect to God and stay very spiritual. And it gives them a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose. Like the kids on campus, they want to march for Hamas. They just want a sense of purpose. They're just so misguided and being used as such useful idiots that they don't even realize how backwards they are, but that doesn't matter. To them, they just want to have a meaningful drive and something to affect the world in some kind of way. They don't just be kids. No one just wants to be students and kids. They want to make a difference. Just making a difference in a wrong, stupid way. So the Torah gave us that beautiful focus of what we should do to make a difference. Be holy in ways of serving Hashem and involving in the Mishkan. But now, at this week's Torah portion, we make a little bit of a shift. Because now Hashem says, you now have to start getting ready for the real mission, the real job. Everything we're doing now, sitting in shul, sitting in the Mishkan, the holy tabernacle, bringing offerings, staying spiritually clean, purifying ourselves, elevating ourselves with holiness. It's all good. It's all good. That's not your main mission of why you're here. Your main mission of why you're here is to go to Israel and to work the land, to be physically inundated with materialism and work to bring that to holiness. Transform this world from a physical place to a spiritual place. Your job is to bring heaven down to earth. And that was very new for them because they were scared. He said, if we go back to that, we'll go back to being in Egypt. We'll go back to being slaves again. Physical life, physical work, that's not holy. That's dangerous for us. And they felt very negatively towards that kind of, and we're going to see it manifest itself most when they were sent to be spies. Because they were sent to check out the land, and 10 of them conspired and said, can't do it. Can't do it. Let's just stay in the desert. Let's stay in the desert here. We have all our needs taken care of. We can focus on spirituality. We don't have to spend all of our day working to make money, working in land, working in agriculture, getting our hands dirty. How's that spiritual? How's it holy to dig a hole in the ground? It's holy because you're making holes, but that's it. There's no gain in godliness in regards to that. So that's the shift now that's about to take place. Because we go to, all right, guys, let's talk about what's going to happen when you get to Israel. And the amazing thing is the Torah is preempting a lot of our concerns. You're going to see in the beginning of this week's parsha, the Torah says, I know you're going to be worried about how you're going to make a living. I know you're going to be worried about how you're going to be safe and secure, how you're going to be protected. Now you have a cloud, you have a fire, you feel like you're untouchable, you're invincible. But when you have to go to war, and you have to go become a farmer, and you have to become a businessman, you don't think it's so spiritual. You don't think you're going to connect to Hashem so well. And Hashem prepares us for that and says, wait, you can do it. You can get it done. Good evening, David. But not only can you get it done, that is the very essence of why you're here in this world. Oh, in the closet right there. So if you want to know, if someone comes to you, a non-Jewish person, and they say to you, what's the difference between Christianity and Judaism? What's the difference? They'll tell you, you can tell them this line, which begins in this week's parsha, and it continues throughout the rest of the Torah. Our job is not that we should do what we can so that we leave earth and we go to heaven. Because that's what Christians want to do. They believe that. That one day we'll be saved, we'll go to heaven, pearly gates, and happily ever after. Our job, and by the way, Islam believes similar with a bit more fairy tale involved, but that's basically the same structure. So let's be a martyr down here, let's die down here, because up there we get the reward. Judaism says our job is to bring heaven down to earth. So not that we have to leave earth and go to heaven, but rather we have to bring heaven down to earth. And that's it. That's that one line that should sum it all up. I had these kids from a Christian college that came to interview me, and they said, Rabbi, give us one difference. And that's what I was able to distill out of it. Because everything that we're doing is to say, how can I bring a little godliness into the water? How can I bring a godliness into the phone? So now we're using phone for Torah. How can we bring a little godliness into a dinner on a random Friday night? Well, you turn it into Shabbat. Wine could be used as a drink at a bar, or it could be used for Kiddush. How can you bring godliness down into the lowest of the low? And the more low you go, the more amazing accomplishment that is to bring godliness into it. And so it becomes a challenge, which is why the Rebbe sent us to go to places where there isn't established Judaism. It says, because if that's our mission, not just personally around you, but go to places where it is missing a little godliness and try and bring it out of those physical places. Especially a place like Parkland, so beautiful, so physically, aesthetically nice. How much more so that can be transformed into something spiritually nice. So that's where we begin with the verse on page 784, where God speaks to Moshe saying, "Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe Behar Sinai lemor." Let's just remind you that what I'm about to say was from Mount Sinai, not just made up now. That's an answer to your question. Every now and then we'll get a reminder that what Moshe is saying is not just a new idea that he just came up with, or a new thought that he's teaching everybody, but it's something that he went up on Mount Sinai, and for 40 days he heard this being taught to him by Hashem, and now he's sharing it with the people, because it's the right time for them to hear it. Daber el bnei Yisrael, speak to the Jewish people. V'amarta elihem, say to them, Ki savayu el haaretz. Now you're going to go into the land very soon. Turns out it was a bit premature, because even though on the schedule, on the GPS, it was only a few days away, maybe a few weeks away, of going into Israel. But on the unplanned route, recalculating route, it happened that the Jews were punished for coming back with that bad report that we just mentioned of Israel. And Hashem basically gave them what we call an intrinsic punishment. Any punishment to a child or a student should be intrinsic, not extrinsic. The same thing with our rewards. What does it mean? What's the difference? So extrinsic means you came home late, I'm going to take away your allowance. It's extrinsic. The allowance has nothing to do with coming home late. But for example, if you say you didn't clean your room yesterday, so now you have to clean your room and you have to clean the kitchen, as an intrinsic recognition to understand being responsible for cleaning, that's more of a consequence than a punishment. It's more just getting them to understand how to repair the damage of what they did, which is the same thing we spoke about in Mishpatim of somebody who steals money, right? What's the punishment the Torah says if you steal money? Steal $100 from somebody? To pay them back twice. Why twice? You have to make them feel it, what you caused them. So you have to feel it. So you took 100 out of them, so now you got to give him back 200, the 100 that you stole, and feel the loss of that 100. So it gives you sensitivity to understand what it is you caused this person. And if you don't have money to pay, what do? You work for the guy, $200 worth. Why? Because when you get close to the family, you realize, I shouldn't have stolen from these guys. They're nice people. And I'm helping them out, and they're so nice. They're mentioned. So it creates a sensitivity training course for you. And so here we have the same idea that when you have an intrinsic kind of reward or punishment scenario, it's much more effective. So I'm not sure which we're referring to here, but yes, the punishment for getting to Israel, when they said it's a bad land and we don't want to go, so what was the punishment? All right, so you don't go. You'll stay in, you want to stay in the desert, you stay in the desert. See how that works out for you. See how that works out for you. You know, sometimes that's, parents will say that. First you laugh and then you cry. You know, it's like, see how that works out for you to jump off the table for another three hours. You know, maybe one more minute it'll work because you'll survive. But at some point you are going to cry. So that's the intrinsic punishment. And the intrinsic reward is what we're about to see here as well, which is that if you do what you're supposed to do in the land, Hashem will bless you through the land in ways that you never otherwise would have received. And that's what it's about to say. So you get into the land. V'shavasaha aretz shabas laHashem. Make sure you have a restful experience for God. Sheish shanim, what is it going to entail? Because we already know about Shabbat. Shabbat, we already know that's 6 days a week you work and 7 days, and the seventh day you rest. So what's this? Sheish shanim, 6 years, tizra sadecha, v'sheish shanim tizmar kamecha. 6 years you should work in the field, and then the seventh, you should take a pause. Right away, Vashana Hashviyit, in the 7th year, Shabbat Shabbason, you should have as a special sabbatical year for God. Shabbat Shabbason Yela Aretz, Shabbos LaHashem. So it should be for the land, and it should be Shabbos LaHashem. Why the double expression? It should be a rest for the land, but also a rest for God. Because it's one thing to sit there and say, all right, I'll just take a break and I'll watch TV for a year. I'll go cruising for a year. I'll take a break off. It'll be a rest for the land and a rest for me. He says, no, Shabbos ha'aretz, Shabbos laHashem. It should be a year that you focus on your spiritual growth and your connection to Torah and mitzvahs. And you don't have a chance. You were worried about that. Now, once every 7 years, you have a chance to go to Kollel, to go study some Talmud, to go get into the mix of what it really is to gain in knowledge and gain in spiritual growth. And so that's what Shabbos LaHashem is. It's not just, and really this is the essence of, there shouldn't really be retirement in Jewish tradition. Because retirement implies that you're just packing it in. You're just stopping with your your main source of work, but you're just going to take it as a very long break now. Just relax for a long time. But that's not really the approach. Yes, you might stop from your physical work, but you now have opportunity to grow in your spiritual work. And that's why you never really retire. You retire physically, but not altogether. Uvashana hashviyis Shabbason, Shabbos liyeh la'aretz, Shabbos la'Hashem, Sadecha lo tizra v'karmecha lo tizmar, which means that the field, you shouldn't work it at all, and you should not derive any benefit from that which grows in the field. So this is what's called the sabbatical year, the Shemitah year. It's still applicable in Israel. 2 years ago was a Shemitah year in Israel. And farmers, Jewish farmers, did not work the land. Now here's where the Torah says that I can understand your concern, because what's going to happen is, and we're just going to jump forward a little bit, because the Torah is addressing that that human needs are obviously first and foremost on all of our minds, and we're going to be worried. How can we not bring in parnasa? How can we not bring in work for that entire year? Okay, so let's take a look at, just jump forward to 788, yeah? So it's look what happens. The Torah predicts it, and it happens. They just don't work the field. Now, from an agricultural standpoint, just touching on something agriculturally, they say that leaving the land fallow for 1 year out of 7 actually gives it a chance to regenerate a lot of its nutrients. And what happens in the markets? You might think it's going to all fall apart. So look at page 788, because Hashem knows exactly how you think and how we think and how any person is thinking. We're worried about where's that money going to come from. And remember, there was no computer jobs back then. It was all agricultural farmers. Everybody was basically a businessman in the fields. And you will say, Ma nochal b'shana hashviyis. This is on the second line, verse 20. What are we going to eat on the 7th year? Hein le nizra. We're not allowed to grow anything. V'lo ne'esof. And we can't even gather to collect what is growing as by itself. V'tzivisi es birchasi lachem b'shana hashishis. Watch what happens. I will make it that you will have such great blessings on the 6th year. V'yasas es hatvua l'sholish hashanim. It will be enough food for you for 3 years. For the 6th year, for the 7th year where you're not harvesting, and for the 8th year where you didn't plant anything for the 7th, there's nothing growing on the 8th year. So 3 years that are missing that you will now have food for. But what's crazy about it is, if you go by the theory of agricultural norms, every year from the 1st is less and less fertile. So there's less and less great produce. So you would think that the 6th naturally would be the weakest year. But Hashem says, it's not going to happen. Now, this is brilliant to a degree that you have no other test that we can give God in the Torah to this level. I mean, yes, Hashem says, test me with charity, with tzedakah. If you give tzedakah, I will pay you back 10 times, right? That's one. But it comes back in different ways, and there's no time frame on that. So it could be 10 years later, you'll make the business deal. But in this case, Hashem's very quantifying in the reward that he says. So let's just say the first 6 years the Jews go to Israel, they plant the fields, and they do all those things, and then they stop and they realize it didn't grow. We don't have enough from the 6th year. Then this whole Torah is basically out the window. Hashem put himself on the line. There's no other place where Hashem puts himself on the line to this degree to say the validity of the Torah is really up for grabs, is really going to be tested. Because if it one time didn't work out this way and the Jews were starving for that 7th year or 8th year, they would have said the Torah's false. It's not true. God's promise didn't come to be. So year in and year out, Jubilee in and Jubilee out, sabbatical in and sabbatical out, the Jews had an unbelievable boon in the 6th year, and it worked. And still till today, Still till today, it's amazing to see what happens. There's a village called Komamiut in Israel. Komamiut is a kibbutz that one of the first years after 1948, they were a religious farm, and they said, we're keeping the Shemitah. Now, most of the farms in Israel in 1948 were not religious. They were the kibbutzniks, they were the secular Jews, and they didn't care for Shemitah, and they just planted their stuff. But these Jews said, we're in Israel, we've got to keep Shemitah. But unfortunately, no one else wanted to support them. So they were in a bit of a bind. And the bind only reached its peak at the end of the Shemitah because they had nothing growing for the whole 7 years. And now they're starting on Rosh Hashanah. And they're like, what are we going to do? How are we going to make ends meet? They had kept like 2 pallets, like maybe 100 sacks of grain, 100 sacks of grain. And they noticed that it had gone bad. And so they asked all their neighbors, could we get good grain from you? Can we get good grain? They're like, no, we have our grain. We need it. You do your Shemitah thing. See if that works out for you. Anyway, they had no choice. And this is a recorded story only 70 years ago. They had no choice but to plant their bad grain. Now, as it turns out, that year, the rains did not come till very late. Usually the rains came at, in October, beginning of November. The rains didn't come till the end of November. And all of the other kibbutzniks, all the other kibbutzim and farms, they had planted their seeds, but they couldn't get anything to grow because they planted too early ahead of the rain. And all those seeds died. These rotten seeds, for whatever reason, stayed in the ground. Maybe they had husks now, maybe they had shelled, maybe they were protected, maybe they just looked like they were bad, but they weren't bad. As soon as it started raining, these seeds came to life and started growing. And the only fields in Israel that year was Komamiut, where everyone came and said, we want your wheat. So that was a miracle in our times that just happened. I have the details of it over here, but that was just because it was food from before. It was from the 6th. They couldn't plant it. That's why it went bad. Because it was from the 6th that they had kept that grain. They couldn't plant it on the 7th. So now it's the beginning of the 8th, and they planted it. It was a crapshoot. They said, we don't think it's going to grow. And it turns out that was the only one that grew. Only one that grew. So still today, Hashem is still providing. But we have a mitzvah though. It's not only on the miracles of Hashem. We do have a mitzvah. And the mitzvah is, we should also look out for the farmers in the Shemitah year and say, I'm not just going to leave you relying on miracles. We're going to be here to help you. We're here to give you a little extra parnasa, things that you need. And during that year of Shemitah, we actually do more things that could bring in income for those farmers that they don't do all along. For example, let's say one is a scribe, so we buy mezuzahs and tefillin from him. Let's say one is a teacher, so we let them go be a teacher in a school, and they take different positions, different roles, so that they can do so to compensate for that. So that's
What's percentage of
today. It's almost 50%. Yeah, it might be more than 50% now. It's completely changed the whole landscape of it. And even the ones that are not, they use loopholes. Like they get the Arabs to buy the land from them, and they do it because officially the Rabbanut in Israel is very strict about giving a hechsher now on the fruit and the vegetables and the restaurants. So if you want to be under Rabbanut's restaurant, you got to make sure you're not using Shemitah fruits. You make sure you're bringing from outside of Israel, or you've got it from the 6th year. So today, more and more restaurants are trying to become kosher, because they're opened up to more clientele. So even the big fancy non-kosher restaurants in Tel Aviv, I just saw this in a newspaper article last week, 5 major non-kosher restaurants in Tel Aviv changed to kosher. So they can pick up, and one of them actually said after October 7th, I felt, it's time to return a little bit more to my roots. So it's not only for business reasons, it's even for ruchnius reasons, spiritual reasons. And they basically have to abide by all the rules of the rabbis, including not using for Shemitah. So that's Parshas Behar, and Parshas Behar is giving us this little intro into, you want to know how it's going to work in Israel? It's going to work with you having to work the fields, but it's going to be with the constant belief and trust that I am going to be able to provide for you. I'm going to be able to give you what you need in order to survive. And that ultimately is still with us today. Every single one of us goes to work with the knowledge that no matter how hard I try, I know that my success is going to be dependent on whether Hashem gives it to me or not. Because you see it straight out. You see some very hard-working people who work their toxes off and barely make ends meet. They struggle. And then you have other people that almost do nothing. Struck a deal, made a good business arrangement with somebody, boom, they're very wealthy. So we know that it's not about your effort, and it's not even about your genius, because you have very smart people who also can't necessarily make it. It's got to do with whether or not Hashem decides that you need it for then, and you are worthy of being that person who carries that responsibility. Now, I will tell you that Hashem is telling us that the test of wealth is actually greater than the test of poverty. Because the test of poverty, all you have to do is go and ask people for money. It's hard. It's a bit of shame involved, but you know what you need to do. The test of wealth is Hashem says, I'm giving you this so you can be my partner. Are you going to distribute this in the way that I expect you to? Because I put all the money in the world. If your brother is become destitute and is quite poor, you must strengthen him, you must support him. And even the people who live with you that are not necessarily Jews, but they're just residents who have lived among you, you also have the obligation to support them. So they'll come to you for a loan. Say, help me out. You're not allowed to take interest when giving them that loan. You should lend them the money, and you should why? Because you have a mitzvah to let your brothers and family members live together with you. Don't take more money as a payment for the guy who's struggling. Now, this is not talking about mortgages, not talking about where you go into business knowing that I'm doing a deal where he can make some money and I'll make money after this loan as well. This is talking about a person who needs the money to survive, needs the money to eat, and he wants to borrow $100 from you. And he says, it's a real struggle for me. Now, what's this following up from? Just to give you a recap, we didn't learn this particular law inside, but the law inside is that the land in Israel that was given to every tribe stayed as their land forever. What happens if a guy wanted to sell the land? Fine. He would sell the land, make some money off it, but at the end of the 50th year, called the Jubilee year, the Yovel, the land would revert back to the original owners. So at most you were selling was a lease. And the longest possible lease you could have was 49 years. As they got closer to the Jubilee year, and you would sell your land, you weren't making much from it because the person who bought it knew I was only keeping it for a year or two, or three, however close it was to the Jubilee year. So there was no monopoly of any rich person coming and saying, like you had these big landowners in Europe and Russia and places where you just were squires and barons of huge lands. It didn't happen in Israel. It was, if you want to sell me some land because you're struggling and you need money, I'll take it from you, but only for the next few years until the Jubilee year. And then it returns back to you. Why? Because every tribe had their portion and parcel that was meant for them and their families forever. But some were not good businessmen. So they wanted to sell their land, and they couldn't sell it because people said it's not valuable enough for me to buy it from you. So then the Torah says if the guy is struggling and you can't buy his land off him, or maybe it's right before the Jubilee year and it's not worth much, you have an obligation to help him out. Give him a loan until he gets his land back or until he gets on his feet again. And don't charge him interest. If you charge him interest, you're capitalizing on his victimhood, his trouble. And so that's not what the Torah wants from us. The Torah wants us to do a mitzvah out of care and concern. But at the same time, you have to make sure that the loan is paid back. So the Torah says you can take collateral from them. And collateral is not interest. Collateral is just a valuable item that says, until you pay back the loan, I'm going to keep it. And one of the valuable items could be a coat. But then the Torah says something amazing. That if the Torah says, but if that's the only coat that they have, then you can't take that coat because you're not going to let them freezing. And if it's the blanket that you take, you got to make sure you return it every night and pick it up again in the morning so they can sleep under the blanket. Because we're not talking about doing anything to cause harm or pain. We're just trying to enable the person to get through that particular experience. Right. And then at the end, Hashem always finishes with this line. Why do you do this? Why should you do this? Because I took you out of the land of Egypt. And now you're in the land where you are free. That line, by the way, on the Jubilee year, where all the land goes back and all the people who were slaves and working for people because they couldn't survive and support themselves, they would all go free. And it says, Ukrasem derar ba'aretz l'chol yoshveha. They would proclaim liberty throughout the land. You know where that is? Where that line is? Where's that line now today written, inscribed, engraved? They shall proclaim liberty throughout the land. It's on the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia. Yeah. Yeah, because it's a quote from the Torah. That freedom was the number one priority of the Jewish people. It's the number one priority now in the United States of America. Liberty. That we should be able to not be enslaved or in any way bound to any other force other than what we choose to do. And ultimately, that choice is so that we can serve Hashem properly. I took you out of Egypt once. You're no longer going to be held captive or held hostage or held under the control of any human being, including yourself, by the way, which you have to sometimes discover on Shabbos who really is in charge. Are you in charge? A guy told me once, he says, told me a few years ago, he says, Rabbi, I can't come to Shul Shabbos. I can't leave my business. I said, wait a second, who's the boss? Who's the bossy business? So I'm the CEO, I'm in charge. I said, no, you're not. I said, if you were in charge, you could tell your business, I'm in charge. You're going to close down for a day. But the business is in charge of you. That's the problem. You are a worker, you are a slave to your business. And that's why Hashem always has to remind us, once you were slaves, but not anymore. And I'm going to make sure you're never slaves again, not to anybody. So that's the reason why we have this obligation, not only to be free ourselves, but to help out those in need too, so that they are not indentured to us or to anybody else. So that's where we're getting ready for going into the land of Israel and giving the support to tell us how it will work in our benefit, and we will not only do okay, but we'll be thriving with the blessings that Hashem gives us. There's a story told of a two brothers, Shimon and Levi. They inherit some gold from their father when he passed away, and Shimon buries his gold in a perfect spot in the middle of his garden, and he says, "I'm going to save it here for a later time. I'm going to keep it here under safeguard. Be buried. No one will know it's here." The other guy said, "I'm just going to keep it in the side room. I'm not gonna think about it. Not gonna deal with it anymore." Keeps it in the side room, and that's what happens. Now Shimon, 3 days after he buries the treasure, is like, "Oh my gosh, what if I don't remember exactly where it is? What if something happened to it? What if there were animals there? What if someone found it, saw me digging?" He went to try and find it, and he miscalculated where he buried it, and he's digging up the wrong place. And he's freaking out. He's in panic. He can't believe it. He doesn't know where's my gold? What happened to it? And he digs another spot. It's not there either. He's freaking out. And he's now in a panic state for the next, who knows how long. The other guy, in the meantime, just sitting there, doesn't think about it. Could be somebody stole it. He doesn't even know. He doesn't even care. When I need it, I'll go and get it. I'll go and find it. There's a statement in Pirkei Avos that says, Marbe nechasim, marbe daigas. The more possessions you have, the more worries you have. So someone asked me, Rabbi, you want to get a nice car? Like, do I want to get a nice car? I'm perfectly happy with my 2011 Toyota Camry. But honestly, if I got a nice car, I'd be very worried. He's going to get a scratch. He's going to get pooped on by the birds. Should I let my kids drive it? No, I can't let them drive it. They've already scraped my car twice at CVS drive-through on that yellow pole. So I'm not going to let them drive it again. So my new car, my nice car, forget about it. I'm going to be so worried. It's going to be, is it locked all the time? I leave my keys in there. And my Camry is like, whatever. They scratch it. She did. My daughter came home, dented it. It's fine. It's no big deal. It's not the end of the world. It's okay. The more you have, the more you're going to worry. Right? So that's the idea of what Hashem is trying to tell us. Perhaps you need to let go a little bit of what you have, what you own, as far as especially the Shemitah, but even look at the money that you could be giving to poor people, helping out others in need, and more about what you can do with it that is of value, that takes away the stress and the worry, because it's all from Hashem anyway. So Hashem gives, Hashem could take it away. So that was all there as a psychological and spiritual preparation for what's going to be when they go into the land and start working in business. This is the business training school parsha for this particular portion that the Jews were getting ready for. The second portion that we want to touch on a little bit, we don't have a lot of time left. We've got 5 minutes or so, but the second portion was, okay, so now you want to know about intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. You're going into Israel, I'm not going to be on top of you anymore. I'm not going to be like Moshe Rabbeinu telling you that he did this wrong, he did that wrong, and you get punished, you lose your man. Man was the food from heaven. You get the man, you lose your water, special water, miracle water, you lose your cloud. Like a lot of miraculous help that the Jews were getting were like children being raised by parents in their early toddler years. You need a little food? She's crying tonight. Like, oh, we're going to go and see you. We're going to make sure you're okay. We're going to take care of you and nurture you and really baby you. That's what that word is, baby you. But when you get a little older, you can take care of it yourself. Go get it yourself. Thirsty? Go get a drink. Go deal with it. Now, you know I'm here. I'm around. But more of as a supervisor rather than a micromanager that's going to baby you and hold your hand through everything. In the desert, God was holding our hand and babying us. People ask, where are the miracles today? He showed us when we were kids. It's like parents, do they still have to be there for you every step of the way when you become older? You don't ask, where are my parents feeding me, spoon feeding me? Where are my parents giving me, doing my laundry? Where are my parents? You say, okay, they showed the love when you were kids. Now you're grown up, you do it yourself. But Hashem said you're going to go into Israel and you're going to find out very quickly that if you don't follow, and if you do follow, there will be consequences of those actions. And there will be ramifications of it. Im Behar-Bechukosai telechu. If you follow in my footsteps, in my statutes, in my message that I've been sharing with you all this time, then goes off to list a whole bunch of rewards that you will get. But if you don't, there'll be a direct result of you not following it. As we mentioned, it will be just consequence of those actions. Now, this has been a story of the Jewish people throughout history. We can't look at the last 100 years because it's too close for us to be able to judge. But if you go back 1,000 years, 2,000 years, 2,500 years, whenever we were listening to Hashem, things were going amazing. Whenever we decided to separate from God's Torah and mitzvahs, that's when things started to fall apart. Now, what's interesting is they use the word im b'chukosai telechu, if you will follow. Right? So im, first word of the parasha, second Torah portion, is Aleph Mem. So Aleph Mem is if you will listen, you'll get the reward. So what's the reward? The reward is full redemption and spiritual connectivity to Hashem without any exile. First time that happened, Aleph Mem was Aaron and Moshe. So Aleph Mem is for Aaron and Moshe. You know when else it happened again? The time of Purim. After the destruction of the first temple, and we realized we made a mistake, and we started to come back to Hashem, and we got the second temple. Who was it? Esther Mordechai. Aleph Mem. And when we finally get it right after the second temple was destroyed, it's been 2,000 years, what's going to happen? Eliyahu and Mashiach. It's going to be Aleph and Mem. They're going to come and take us out of this exile and bring us to redemption. So im is if, but it's also more of a when. also more of a who. So then it says, Bechukosai telecho. And this is, I'd like to finish with this point, because unlike any other business, Amy, what's your business? What's your line of preschool teacher? If you didn't show up to class, but you prepared all the activities, but you never showed up to class, but you spent a lot of time preparing, would you get paid for that? Right. Dave, you work really hard on getting all the tools ready to sell, but you don't actually sell any. Do you get income? No. Realtor, anyone a realtor? You could try and sell a house, but if you don't actually sell the house, do you get paid for it? No. There was a fellow in Russia whose job was to make boots for the Tsar. And he tried 6 different types of boots, and the Tsar kicked him out each time and said, "These are terrible boots. I don't want to wear them." And finally he said, "That's it. I'm done with you. No more boots, no more making anything for me." So the guy had the chutzpah to say to the Tsar, "But I worked on these 6 boots for the last 2 months. Can you pay me at least for my trouble?" And he's lucky to have survived that. He's lucky that he didn't get his head chopped off. Because who would pay you for a product that I didn't want? Didn't complete it, right? Only Hashem says, Im Behar-Bechukosai, if my commandments, telechu, you walk in the direction of them. You don't have to actually get there and get it done. You just have to make the effort to try, start walking to shul, the door's locked, doesn't matter. You get the full credit as if you went to shul. Because telechu, you made the effort. It's an unbelievable wording, because it doesn't say, Im Behar-Bechukosai ta'asu, or Im Behar-Bechukosai tekaimu, where you fulfill it, or you do it. It says telechu. You just have to go walk towards it. And that each and every one of us can do. So there's no more excuses to say, it's too hard for me to do all of Shabbos, it's too hard for me to do all of kosher, too hard for me to do all of the mitzvahs that I'm required to do. Hashem's asking us. Hashem's just saying, just let me see your effort. See your effort going forward, make the effort, and I will give you the reward. Have a wonderful rest of your day.